Is this the real Victor Conte, or did somebody catfishing me?
No, this is the real Victor Conte.
Okay, Victor, I'm glad you called. Let's give you a round of applause. We got Victor Conte on the phone, guys. Got Victor Conte on the phone. Sir, sir, I gotta say this is my first. I don't know you. This is my first time I'm speaking with you, and you don't know me. But we run a boxing show podcast every day, 3 o'clock East Coast time. And there's been a lot going on social media with certain social media platforms, in boxing about SNAC. Now they only bring this up when it comes to certain fighters that they don't like. Even though some of the fighters that they do like is on it, they don't say anything. Could you please explain to my audience what SNAC is? Is SNAC a PED?
No, SNAC is the opposite of PEDs. SNAC is an entire program that includes blood testing and based upon the findings, we develop individualized nutrition programs and programs for the boxers. Uh-huh. There's a lot of information out there that I see that you're talking about that is on social media now. It's just inaccurate. They're saying that this fighter, did this and this fighter did that, and they're putting people in there that doesn't even make sense. They're making stuff up. There's just inaccurate information, and I don't know what this faction's all about and the attack's all about, but a lot of people refer to Balco and what happened with Barry Bonds and Marion Jones and undetectable steroids and all that back. But you got to understand that was in 2003. That was 20 years ago. And yes, I went to prison for 4 months, but I got out and decided that the knowledge that I had gained by being on the dark side, that was going down that slippery slope, was a choice that I made. But I used that knowledge to help the anti-doping movement in boxing. And I think it's more important in boxing than other sports, any sort of combat sports, because the objective is bodily harm. So all of these SNAC fighters that come to SNAC or are being sponsored by SNAC, they are clean fighters. They're doing testing with VADA, the Voluntary Anti-Doping Association based there in Las Vegas. This is just all nonsense. I mean, they're saying, as an example, that what happened with Caleb Plant. Well, yes, SNAC worked with Caleb Plant for the fight with Canelo, but he was not. We did not work with him for the fight with Benavidez. But they just, when they state this, they state it all as being facts, and they're just incorrect. SNAC is clean boxing, is basically what SNAC is. And if you go to the website, you'll see that what we do is we sell sports nutrition products.
Which fighters that you currently have that uses SNAC products right now? That's in boxing.
Devin Haney, Terence Crawford, Bam Rodriguez, are a few. Julian Williams. There's a whole bunch of them.
What about Jerron Boots Ennis?
No, he does not. We did help him. We did help him for one fight, but not thereafter.
Okay, so he did use it. So he was on. You helped him for one fight. So he used SNAC one time, to your knowledge.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and that's a lot of times that's the case. Where it's you got to understand when I see these SNAC shirts and they place all these guys like in a lineup. I don't know where this information comes from, but none of those fighters ever received any PEDs from me. Mm. If in the case of Andre Berto was one and Willie Monroe was another, but you got to understand that they might have been with SNAC. Willie came in as a sparring partner for one fight, and when he tested positive, apparently with some sort of extends that he bought to enhance his libido, but he was 3,000 miles away in New York. He hadn't been to SNAC for 6 months. Same with Berto. Berto injured himself. He was training in LA. He had all these surgeries and stuff. Then he went to Winter Haven, Florida. He's 3,000 miles away, and 6 months later, and he pops positive. This has nothing to do with SNAC. They see all these SNAC shirts, and they immediately assume that they've been with SNAC for the last 20 years. And that's just not the case.
So why is that? Because I'm seeing a tweet on there from Javante Tank Davis. Him and I don't know. I know you be on Twitter, but him and Javante Davis, his fans, and Devin Haney and his fans, they've been having like a Twitter war, a nice little boxing match going on Twitter. And Tank put out a tweet saying that we need to get rid of SNAC. Now, why do you think he's saying that?
Well, because they're referring to the Balco case, which happened in 2003. That was 20 years ago. I've been an outspoken anti-doping advocate helping boxers, and I encourage every boxer that we work with to enroll in testing. You know, Devin, I probably helped him maybe the last 10 fights or so, and every fight he does very stringent VADA testing. So this BS about SNAC, and the same thing with Terence Crawford. He did very intensive VADA testing. Okay, so did Errol Spence. That's one of the requirements that I have with working with most boxers. Now, you got to understand that we sell gear just like Nike sells gear, right? So people can buy these hats and shirts and trunks and stuff. So, yes, we sponsor a lot of boxers, elite boxers. Yes, it's great that they promote our brand, right? But that doesn't necessarily mean that they do the more intensive program, including blood testing and individualized programs. They may just be taking the supplements. So you can't throw everybody into the same boat is the point I'm trying to make there. Each one is I have a different type of relationship with every single boxer.
What is the what's different from like SNAC supplements versus other supplements? You know, 'cause I buy a lot of supplements myself. What's the difference between the two?
You're talking about the products?
Yes, sir. The products. Yeah, like you know, because I get supplements myself, like creatine and stuff like that.
Okay. So if you notice, most of the products on the market today are copycat Me Too type products. What I mean by that is they'll just call their product as a pre-workout, right? So they basically have the same list of ingredients and they're all doing the same thing. SNAC has trademarked name products like Vitalize and Expedite and Arobatine. Each one of these does different things. And so we have individual formulations that are not like the rest of the industry. So that's what's different. You take the whole concept of nutrient timing in sports nutrition was created by me back in 1996 with a product called ZMA, which is a huge product. We sell bulk powder to. We've licensed over 100 companies that are selling it. If you go to Google or you go to Amazon, you'll find 25, 30 brands of ZMA, but they all come from SNAC. So this formula was to be taken at night before bedtime because this is when healing and tissue repair and anabolic hormone production, testosterone, growth hormone, it all occurs at night. So I created a formula and said that men take this dosage, women take this dosage. You take it at night, 30 to 60 minutes before you go to bed. Do not take it with other supplements like calcium-based foods or supplements that inhibit the absorption of zinc and magnesium. So this whole concept of taking supplements and ingredients at specific times of the day started with ZMA and back in 1996.
So, are there ways that fighters can beat VADA testing today?
Oh, there are substances, yes, that they can apply if they can get access to it. And one of them that I've talked about is IGF-1 long R3. And it's kind of like growth hormone, only instead of being in milligrams, it's in micrograms. And they just don't have a test for it. So guys can fly below the radar there. And other types of substances, you have what they call a threshold, meaning an allowable limit that you can have. But people don't realize that you can test positive for caffeine. Caffeine has an allowable limit. If they find over 1,000 milligrams in which would be, say each regular cup of coffee would be 50 milligrams and an espresso would be 150. If you were to drink 6 or 7 espressos before, you would test positive. So there's a threshold. There's an allowable limit for some of these substances that they take. So but does that mean that it means that the testing is not beneficial? Absolutely not, because let's just take testosterone as an example. If you didn't have testing, guys would be taking huge dosages, like 5,000 milligrams a week is what a pro bodybuilder would take. The replacement dosage is a couple of hundred milligrams. A and they've got the TE ratio, which is testosterone to epitestosterone. And that normal ratio is about 1-to-1. If you come back above 4-to-1, then that would be considered a positive test. But there are ways that guys microdose, meaning they take very small amounts on a daily basis, and they might increase their testosterone from 1-to-1 to 3-to-1. So they're getting some benefit, but it's certainly not like if there wasn't any testing. So are there ways to do things on a very, what they call microdosing basis? The answer is yes.
Does SNAC give boxing athletes any kind of unfair advantages that a fighter who is not using SNAC products would have? Does it give them any advantages?
Well, I wouldn't call it unfair advantages. They're legal. See, as an example, at the training facility that we have 35 different hypoxicators and oxygen concentrators. And we use these it's like what we call resistance versus assistance training. That would be running uphill or running downhill, running against the wind or running with the wind. So at different times during the training camp, they call it periodization, we'll have them running uphill or using low oxygen. And what does this do? It builds up lactic acid faster, and this triggers the production of testosterone and growth hormone. So we do things, we have equipment that other boxing gyms just don't have. So, and we use the high oxygen for recovery because I don't know if you've ever heard of this movie called Chasing Perfection by Michael Johnson, the Olympic gold medalist in the 400 meters.
Yeah,
he
so
went around
I
all
remember
these
that.
different training centers.
Yeah, he beat out. No, you're talking about Michael Johnson. Yeah. I remember.
Yeah, Michael Johnson. And basically what the theme of the film is that the actual performance gains that are made by athletes occur during the recovery interval. So you break down, you what they call a metabolic disturbance. When you train hard, you create all these micro tears and cuts in the muscle tissue. And when you heal back, that's when it's converted from slow twitch to fast twitch muscle fiber. That's when the gains, the healing and tissue repair, that's actually when those gains are made. So we do things to facilitate that with nutrition, with making sure they're hydrated, with high oxygen. We have all sorts of equipment that other boxing facilities just don't have. So is that an advantage? Yes. Could anybody else that have this knowledge go out and get them and use those because they're perfectly legal? The answer is yes.
Okay. So it is perfectly legal. Did you conspire with Terence Crawford? And this is a serious question. Did you conspire with Terence Crawford with SNAC products to help him defeat Errol Spence? And I'm gonna tell you where I'm going at with this, because after Terence Crawford beat Errol Spence, a whole bunch of conspiracies came around online with Spence being weight drained. He had hurt ribs. He was on edibles before he came to the ring. And then ultimately one of them was Terence Crawford was on SNAC. And SNAC is a way that athletes can cheat. And Victor Conte, because you was the founder of Ball Code, you have something called SNAC, meaning snack on top of snack. And that's like it's snack, but then it's some kind of like a sub element that makes the snack more of a PED. But you're such a great scientist that it's undetectable to VADA and stuff like that. Could you answer that for those who may believe that?
Of course. Terence Crawford did not take anything that was undetectable. They talk about that because back in the day, 20 years ago, there was an undetectable steroid that I was giving to athletes, and it was helping them. Mm-hmm. Now, you got to understand, at that time in baseball, there was no testing. So it didn't make sense for a baseball player or somebody who's not subjected to testing when they can use testosterone and growth hormone and the whole array of anabolic steroids, because there was no testing. But for Olympic athletes, where drug use is rampant, I was using that. And for athletes. And yes, I got in trouble. I did not cooperate. I went to prison. I did my time. I came out and I became an anti-doping advocate. And I've met with everybody, USADA, WADA, VADA on multiple times and do my best to explain to them how the athletes are circumventing the drug testing. But Terence Crawford, everything that he did was legal. Now, let me talk a little bit about that. Terence is a great fighter, and he deserves all the credit in the world. But one thing that I know that happened And I know this because somebody was there and did this together with Errol Spence that, in my opinion, was extremely stupid, okay? 7 days before the fight, he went up to Mount Charles and ran long distance at an elevation of 8,300 feet. When you come and when you do high elevation training, you have to acclimate to that. You have to go up, and because the oxygen content gets reduced. So by the time you get to 10,000 foot elevation, you're breathing 14% oxygen compared to at sea level, it's 20.9. Well, you can develop what they call mountain sickness or high altitude training sickness. You just don't decide one day, 7 days out from the fight, that you're going to go run, as many as 5 miles. And a guy that I work with was actually a part of that group and ran with him. That's why I know, because they took a picture when they got to the top.
I heard about that.
So, I don't know what all went into the training, but I do have knowledge that Earl did some stuff that I think was not very smart and actually hindered his performance. But nothing should take away from the credit from Terence Crawford. He is a great fighter. He's always been a great fighter. I really enjoy working with Terence because he's a straight shooter. He tells you like it is. And, he's a man of his word. He's very loyal. And he wanted to do the absolute most stringent VADA testing that could be done. And I helped him to make those arrangements and make sure that they were going to be tested on average about every 10 or 11 days, both Earl and Terence. And so he deserves all the credit. He won that fight fair and square. All this other stuff is a bunch of nonsense.
How did you get involved with the sport of boxing? A lot of people want to ask that question as well, because you have fighters that are PBC fighters, that's on SNAC. You have fighters that are top ranked fighters, Matchroom, whatever. And then you have the sanctioning bodies. How did you get involved with boxing? So
the first boxer that I worked with was Shane Mosley, and that was during the Balco days, and that was back in 2003. And I did provide him with PEDs. Okay. Now, 6 years later, and this is after I went to the prison camp and got out and started working with athletes again, I started working through trainer Virgil Hunter with Andre Ward. And I helped him a couple fights, Edison Miranda, which was in July of 2009, and then the Mikkel Kessler fight, which was in November of 2009. And then the next fighter was Nonito Donaire. And of course, he was friends with Andre, so he talked with him. And then I started working with Nonito, and we had I believe, an 8-fight run, and where he was the very first ever in 2012 boxer to do 24/7, 365 testing with VADA. I sponsored that at a cost of $20,000. Why? A lot, because I was trying to help the anti-doping movement. And so Nonito actually in 2012 won the Boxing Writers Association Fighter of the Year award. 4 fights and four W's and beat out Juan Manuel Marquez, who knocked out Pacquiao that year.
Yeah, I remember that.
And then it started from there, and I think Berto came to work with Virgil, and I worked with him, and then it just, the news travels fast, I guess, and so one boxer after another came from there. And I was asked this recently by Jim Lampley, if I would put together a list of the world champions that had trained at the SNAC facility, and surprisingly, that number was 28 world champions. So we've had an extensive 14-year period working with elite boxers.
Does VADA, and this is, I don't know if you know the answer to this, but I got to ask it. Does VADA and WADA conspire with promotional companies, sanctioning bodies, and stuff like that in order to help certain fighters, pass drug tests and win fights more so than others?
No, they do not. Let me explain to you the difference between VADA and WADA and USADA and other like UKAD. They operate under what's called the WADA code. Now, I actually met with a guy named Rich Young in 2005 when I first became an anti-doping advocate. I went over a couple thousand pages of documents with him. And at that time, He was the person that wrote the policies and procedures, what they call the WADA code. Now, what is really inept about that is they have two prohibited substances lists, in competition and out of competition. Now, out of competition, that means, up until midnight the night before a fight. So they can use a total of 70 different types of stimulants that are not prohibited out of competition. Now, in boxing, you see guys test positive and, hey, they can cut, 20, 30 pounds in 30 days. How are they doing this? They're using something called phentermine. Oscar Valdez tested positive for this, if you remember. And this is the most prescribed weight loss drug in the world. And it's legal to use, is what I'm telling you. So you can use amphetamines, and it's legal. So that is really bad about WADA. And then, of course, on fight night, they don't allow stimulants. Same thing with narcotics. You can use any and all narcotics out of competition, but you can't on fight night. So when VADA was formed, they changed the entire rule. They use WADA-accredited labs. They test for all of the same substances that WADA does, but they consider if it's performance-enhancing on fight night, it's performance-enhancing all throughout training camp, too. So they use what they test for all prohibited substances at all times. So it's much more stringent. So UKAD compared to VADA is like night and day. UKAD, which follows the WADA code, which is the Olympic caliber testing, they don't test for any stimulants or narcotics out of competition. And they rarely test. The number of tests that they do is really infrequent and inept as well. But people that are doing VADA testing, when they sign that form, I'll give you an example, was DJ Saunders, who signed up and was testing, a negative with UKAD his whole career, and he gets in VADA, and bam, he pops positive. Well, that's because VADA tests for everything on the menu, not just a select a few during training camp and then more stringent testing on fight night. So there's a big difference there. If you look at the background of who VADA is, it's Margaret Goodman, who was the chairman of the medical advisory board for the Nevada State Athletic Commission for a decade. Her significant other, Flip Homonsky, who was the head of that medical commission for a decade before she took over. So for 20 years, they were the heads of the medical advisory board of the Nevada State Athletic Commission. Flip Homonsky is the one that introduced anabolic steroid testing to the world of boxing. So these are the most credible people in the history of drug testing for boxing that run VADA. People need to understand that and who they are and what they do and why they're credible.
Do fighters have?
So there's no conspiracy there at all. In the beginning, I did introduce Margaret to Dick Pound, who was the founding chairman of WADA, and he kind of gave her a recommendation to the doping control officers of the laboratories that do the testing, and she put this all together. Margaret deserves all the credit in the world. As Jim Lampa says, there's only one Margaret Goodman. So VADA deserves all the respect in the world. They're not in collusion with any of these promoters to do this or that or the other. If you're now doing VADA testing, and what we'll call the full VADA testing, which is for testing for all prohibited substances at all times. Now, let me say that historically, there has been a couple of times where they have done the testing for the California State Athletic Commission and the Nevada State Athletic Commission, and they requested that they on the test requisition when it went to the lab that they did the WADA code. Now, I think since then, both of those commissions now do the full VADA testing of all prohibited substances at all times. But historically, there have been a couple of times, but they were not following the promoter. They were following the instruction of the state commission.
You said a lot. Do fighters get a list of banned substances that they can't, that they are not allowed to use before they go into a competition?
Yes, when they enroll, they get a list, and they can look at the list. And of course, if there's any questions, there's actually a website that VADA provides that you can go in and type in whatever this product is. It could be a supplement, it could be a drug, whatever it is, and you can determine, it'll come back. It usually takes about 24 hours, but they give you a response. And then in terms of a risk factor, it'll either be risk 1, 2, 3, or level 4 or 5. So you can research this before you take it. You can always call and contact them and say, the doctor's prescribing this, or there may be times when you might need to get what they call a TUE, a TUE, a therapeutic use exemption. And that means that you submit the doctor's recommendation that you use the drug, his prescription, and then it goes before a review board, and it takes a few days to get back and either give you a yay or nay.
So So let's say a fighter getting ready to have a fight, a championship fight, someone like a Caleb Plant or a Crawford or a Devin Haney. Like, so what do they do? Do they have to? Because I always wondered. I know these athletes, they make a lot of money, and they have some of the best trainers in the world and use some of the best facilities because they're on a world-class level. So is it the responsibility that you know of let's say, their personal chef or strength and conditioning coach or their head coach? Of course, the responsibility lies on the fighter. But what can the fighter do to ensure he's not eating a certain food that may have something on the ban list?
Mm-hmm. What are you talking about, like clenbuterol being in beef and so on?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
First of all, they fill out 2 or 3 different forms, an enrollment form and a whereabouts form. And these trainers and doctors are listed and their numbers are on it. And then they will say when they go to do strength and conditioning, what days and what facility, when they do sparring, what days and what facility, and the same with regular boxing training. So this is all detailed, and they are very smart in that they know that at this point in time, the most of the drug use occurs at night. So what they try to do to circumvent the program is that on a whereabouts form, you have to give them what they call a 1-hour window. And what that means is I'm going to be at this place from 9 to 10 on a daily basis, or I'll be here, so that they can show up and you're going to be there. Now, if you're not there, they're going to call you and they're going to wait and they're going to find you. But they can come at any time. So now what they're doing, and I know this because I work with many, many, many fighters who do VADA testing. As an example, recently with Benavidez and Demetrius Andrade, they came at like 10 o'clock at night. They came at 6:30 in the morning because they realized that when people are doing fast-acting substances like testosterone or growth hormone, that they try to use it at night, it peaks in the bloodstream, and then by the time it gets back down in the morning, it'll be back down below the allowable limit. So VADA is very smart. They do things, they know how to catch people. That's why under WADA code, it's well known that about 1% of the tests they do come back positive. VADA's statistics are about 4% of the tests that they do come back positive. So VADA catches many more people than others in terms of statistics, like the UFC or like USADA for all other United States Olympic athletes, etc. So VADA's doing a very effective job.
When Floyd Mayweather was boxing, I forgot which sanction, which drug agency he used to use. I think maybe it was WADA. We used to hear a lot.
He was using USADA, which goes under the rules of WADA. WADA is the parent, entity, and the others are called national governing bodies that follow the rules of WADA. So he was doing USADA. He never did VADA.
Yeah, so I heard, I heard rumors online that, hey man, Floyd pretty much had USADA in his back pocket. He was taking things, but but he wasn't using. He wasn't being tested with VADA. I don't know if you remember those things, but I remember that very, very well. And they still had these arguments today online. So the difference between USADA and VADA is a lot more strict and stringent when they do their testing versus USADA is very easy to. Is it more relaxed? You can get away with things?
Well, of course, if they're not doing any testing for a total of more than 80 different prohibited substances, well, there's no test. So you're not going to catch, if you don't put your hook and line in the water, how do you expect to catch a fish? So they just don't test for more than 80 different substances during training camp.
Yeah, I see what you're saying.
So all you got to do is taper off and make sure you don't have it in your system. Some of these things clear in 72 hours. And then, however, let me say something else that's important now. The reason that I have been an advocate of 24/7, 365 testing, and there have been 3 in all of boxing history, okay? Nonito Donaire. I also sponsored Edwin Rodriguez back in the days when he fought Andre Ward, and I had a cost then of $20,000 each. And then when Canelo tested positive in 2018, for a year, 1 year only, he did 24/7, 365, and then he stopped. Now, what they do is just sign up, and it's different for every fight, is you never know, are you going to have 12 weeks, are you going to have 8 weeks, are you going to have 7 weeks? What do you got before the fight? And then they start with random testing. And so the cost is different because it's over a different length of time. On average, the most stringent, they'll be tested about, on average, once every 10 days. Okay? But as an example, Demetrius's fight recently with Benavidez, well, they only signed it like 7 weeks out, so there was 6 weeks of testing. When Crawford fought Spence, there was 12 weeks of testing. So obviously it costs more because you're doing more tests. So are you going to do 3 or 4 or 5 tests, including fight night, or are you going to do 8 or 9 or 10 tests? But
who
they
pays
try
for that?
to, the fighters pay for that, and sometimes the promoters pay for that. And when they do, the promoters deserve credit. But let me just give you an idea of how much it costs. The most expensive that I know of was when Plant fought Canelo, because I sponsored and paid for Canelo, for not Canelo, but for Caleb. And it was $40,000 for both fighters. Most of the time it's $30,000. Okay. Which means instead of $20,000 per fighter, it's 15. Now you can figure out the number of times you're going to be tested because on average, because this varies depending upon travel expense and where you got to go to collect the sample and all that, but it's about $2,500 per test. So if they come every 10 days, they're paying about $2,500 every 10 days to be tested for all prohibited substances. So you can calculate from there. All I'm telling you is they pay different amounts. It depends upon the length of time that they're going to be tested for, if that makes sense.
Yes, sir. It makes perfect sense. I understand exactly what you're saying. For those who may be still critical of you, you have some that say, "Hey, man, we don't believe nothing Victor Conte say. He's a drug cheat. He went to jail for this and that. And such and such, such and such." For those guys, is there what kind of information? I have someone who sent this a super chat. I'm going to address their question. What kind of information that they can find on their own? Let's say someone in the chat, y'all don't believe anything Victor Conte is saying. So where can they go at to do their own research to satisfy their own pessimism if they choose to do that?
And let me tell you a problem that exists. Okay, and I do not like this, and I've said this, and I've been, I don't know what to call it, escorted out of an arena because of this, okay? But when PBC does not have transparency, they do not allow VADA to disclose who's being tested and who's not being tested. So that's my big criticism of them.
That's PBC?
Other promoters, Top Rank and Matchroom, they then VADA themselves on their Twitter account, if you look, it'll say, "We would like to welcome this fighter and this fighter to drug testing at VADA for their fight on such and such a date." So that is the case. They are announced. There is transparency, but there's no transparency for BBC. So I've been complaining about this, tweeting about this, calling everybody out about this, because I believe there needs to be full transparency regarding drug testing in boxing.
Why is that though? Why is there no transparency?
Well, what I've heard is that they don't want people to know who's being tested and who's not, because that way everybody will want to be tested, and they can't afford to pay for testing for everybody. But let me give you a specific example and why I went ballistic on Twitter over this. In the beginning of this year, in January, I went to DC for the Tank versus Garcia fight. And on that card, I had 5 fighters, okay? 5 fighters, including Hector in the main event, Boots, all down the line. There was Rashidi Ellis, there was Demetrius Andrade, there was Tyrone Davis. Only one of those fighters was tested. And that was the main event. And there was not real stringent testing even for that. So here you've got Demetrius Andrade, a 2-time world champion, on the card, on pay-per-view, and no testing whatsoever. 0. Not even by the state commission. What now, if you go into a fight and you know as a fighter or that camp that you've been informed by the promoter that there will be no testing, what's the likelihood that you might use drugs if given that opportunity?
Yeah, highly.
So this whole thing is ridiculous to me, and I will continue to call it out because it's important. And this is why, as an example, just recently, I can tell you that there was testing for Benavidez and Andrade, but it was never announced.
Okay.
So this is when you're asking me disclose, I'm telling you how it works and how it doesn't and why people don't know. I wish everybody, that, and I do criticize VADA for this. They should be wearing the pants and telling the promoters who they're going to disclose and who they're not. And yet the financial leverage is, well, we'll test some fighters, not many. There are cases where I had fighters that we demanded that who was it that fought recently? I guess it was the most recent card with Mario Barrios, who was with SNAC. And I can tell you that other people on that card, there was no testing. Now, Mario was tested and his opponent was, Ugas was tested, but there was no testing for other fighters. So, and the only way that they knew, if you go back and look at my Twitter feed, is because I came out and I announced my fighter, Mario Barrios, is being tested, or whomever it is. I become transparent. I may let everybody know who's being tested and who's not. So I'm kind of the whistleblower. I'm kind of the person who's trying to pull back the curtain and let the world find out, who has an opportunity to cheat, let alone whether they're doing it or not, but who's been given that opportunity because nobody knows whether there's testing or not.
But I have a question for you from the chats. Brother paid $5. Shout out to Kevin for dropping $5. He said, does Mr. Conte validate Canelo's hair follicle test to prove that he wasn't taking clenbuterol long term?
I wouldn't call it prove. I would call it, this is information that is helpful. A hair test, every sample, whether it be blood or urine or hair, has limitations. So blood gives you the acute here and now dynamic, right? Mm-hmm. Urine gives you what's being excreted, but only goes back maybe a month, okay? Hair doesn't tell you anything about the here and now dynamic, but it's a historical perspective. If you could take your urine and collect it and keep it for 6 months and then shake it up and pour off a little aliquot and test it, that would be the type of data you would get from hair. So hair tells you historically, 3 months, 6 months ago, but their limitations are different color hair, has an affinity for different substances, you have a different growth rate. So does it give you what I would call confirmatory information? Is it helpful? Yes, it is. Is it make it, absolute proof that somebody did or didn't use? The answer is no. So what Canelo did, at first I was very suspicious of him, but he can serve as a role model for what you should do if you do test positive, which is, one, you have to identify where the source, where did you get it? So he went to the restaurant where he thought he got exposed, and he had his receipts from that restaurant. He found out where they purchased their meat, he traced that to the slaughterhouse where the beef came from. They found out that not only that slaughterhouse, but all slaughterhouses in Mexico, that 30% were producing meat that was contaminated with clenbuterol. So you could walk up to a hamburger stand in Mexico and test positive for clenbuterol. So there was a case previous to this with soccer players where on their soccer team, and 5 of them came back positive. Well, they appealed this all the way to what they call CAS, the Court of Arbitration for Sport, which is in Sweden, and they determined they were exonerated because they proved that there was no intent. So he said, what happened? And he said, well, I went to this restaurant. I ate this. Here's the receipt. I went to the slaughterhouse. Now we found out the tests have been done where 30% of the beef had been, was contaminated. I did a hair test, came back, was consistent with, contamination and not with intent to cheat based upon the amount they found. Because the way you use clenbuterol is you ramp up and you ramp down on the dosage. Mm-hmm. And you would see, based upon the concentration in hair, whether or not there was an intent to cheat there. Now, one of the limitations is with hair is that light hair has an affinity for certain substances and dark hair has an affinity for others. So you might find a higher concentration in dark as opposed to light hair. So is this absolute positive nail in the coffin type proof or evidence that he didn't use? No, but it's supportive evidence. And he did. So he still got a 6-month suspension and he did 1 year of 24/7, 365 testing thereafter, which no one else has done. Okay. So I'm not saying it's perfect. And I want to go back and talk a little bit about the problem that exists today, even with Nevada testing. And that is because they cannot get people to pay to do 365 testing. And I've offered this to many top elite fighters that I would sponsor and pay for it. Let me give you an example, okay, of what we do and what we don't know. So I'll just do this because many fighters, this all started with Mayweather, but let's just use Benavidez as an example. He fought Caleb Plant. We know there was stringent testing there for 12 weeks, and that was in March. Okay, then he fought Andre in the end of November, 1st of December, 8 months later. Okay, so there was 6 weeks worth of testing there. What was happening during those 7 months in between when there was no testing? And let me explain something that people may not understand. The benefit that you get from using testosterone or other types of anabolic steroids in conjunction with growth hormone and other sorts of anabolic agents, and what the speed and power and muscle, what you develop, has carryover effects. So you can use drugs for 3 months, go off for 3 months, and on fight night, you got a tremendous competitive edge.
Can it be detected if they take a VADA test?
It cannot be detected, no.
So you're saying...
No, it cannot.
So
there's a clearance. All drugs have a clearance time. They're different depending upon frequency and dosage of use. But the point is, during that time, and it could have been Demetrius, it could have been David Benavidez. But during that time, because neither one were tested. So they're tested for a short period of time. That's like saying when you're starving, a half a loaf of bread's better than none. Okay? So the testing is helpful. I don't mean to completely discredit it, but what's happening during that period of time? And this all started with Mayweather and then continued with Canelo. And here's the problem. They fight in whatever it is, September, and then they fight again in May. Well, what happens in between there when there's no testing? And the benefits from using these drugs when training carry over for months. Olympic athletes that compete in the Olympics in August and September, the fourth quarter of the previous year, October, November, December, those are the time frame that they're using these drugs because they do less amount of testing at that time and it's easier to circumvent. And those gains carry over when they go to the Olympics 6 to 9 months later.
So
say that the benefits last forever. So what I'm saying is there needs to be 24/7, 365 testing. I have offered this to online, on Twitter, to Errol Spence, to Terence Crawford, to Devin Haney. I've offered to sponsor this. Okay, nobody wants to do it until somebody else is doing it. It's like you're selling tickets to a vacation on a bus. Those first few tickets are the hardest to sell. Once somebody steps up and does it, because they realize that they're doing it and the other guy's not doing it, they're at a disadvantage.
So our fighters, do you know of fighters like Shakur Stevenson, Tank Davis, Santos are enrolled in VADA?
They're doing the pre-fight VADA. So depends on when they sign the fight. and it depends upon how quickly they enroll. Now, this is where on Twitter, I get after everybody. And I was after David Benavidez because we signed the contract on a Saturday. Demetrius is enrolled on a Sunday. The emails went out to them on Monday, not on Monday, not on Tuesday. At the end of Tuesday, I said, look, you're dragging your heels. You could potentially be waiting for clearance of drugs from the system before you enroll. Well, why are you doing this? Right? And then, of course, the next day, then the forms came in. But you have to push people into this pool, and oftentimes when they're tapering off, a lot of the positive tests come from the very beginning of the testing period.
Is there a way to beat the system? I know I asked you this earlier, but is there a way to kind of cheat it? Like, I'm not saying.
I just told you that the barn door is wide open when there's no testing.
Right. Yeah, you did.
So every single fight, if nobody, and I gave you the history of boxing, if nobody's doing 24/7, 365, the barn door is wide open for all of boxing to use drugs.
Right. No, I got that. No, trust me, I got what you said as related to that. But some people really believe that okay, let's say the fight getting ready to come up. Let's say it's 3 weeks out, 2 weeks out. I'm telling you, Victor, there's a lot of people online. When it comes to certain fighters, they really feel deep down in their heart, they don't have any proof that this guy must have been on something. He had to be on something. And with someone like yourself who has a very extensive knowledge when it comes to drugs and drug testing and PEDs, someone who doesn't have the knowledge that you have would say they don't believe you're lying, but they can't prove that you're lying for whatever biases that they may have. What say you about people like that? What is it that they can, or is it damn if you do, damn if you don't? There's nothing I can say they're gonna believe what they want to believe.
Let me say this. I would have more risk doing something like that than probably anybody else on the planet. If you don't think they're watching me and testing me and everybody that's associated with me, the cleanest fighters are the SNAC fighters. They're not the other fighters. And these ones that have tested positive, I've been doing this for 14 years in terms of testing, the VADA testing of the SNAC fighters. Now, when this guy tests positive or that guy, and there's been a couple, okay, but does that mean they're even with me? If they might have been with me for one training camp, and then 6 months, a year later, they test positive, and they go, "Oh, look at this picture.
Yeah,
He's wearing a SNAC shirt."
Yeah, they're gonna blame it on you. Yeah.
Complete BS. Yeah. I believe I'm the cleanest guy in boxing. That does anything like what I do. If there's somebody who is clean, it's me. Why? I've had a very successful business. I've made a lot of money. It says in the Netflix documentary that I've made $80 million. Yes, I've got Rolls Royces and Bentleys and all the rest of it. Why would I risk any of that? I don't need boxing. I do this as a hobby. This is fun to me. I'm 73 years old. Enjoy the challenge. I enjoy working with these boxers, but I do not do it for the money. And they don't pay me. I pay them. Am I clear? Yeah. Nobody pays me. Okay. So what's the end game? I've had a line of nutritional products since I created ZMA in 1996. I have hundreds of distributors all over the world. That's boxing doesn't make me any money. I sell bulk powder in thousands and thousands of kilos that makes me millions of dollars. Why would I jeopardize any of that?
Oh, hold on. That can be interpreted any way now, because you said you sell bulk powder. That what you say, sell thousands of kilos. So there's going to be somebody listening to this.
I own the trademark ZMA, correct?
Yeah,
I own that trademark.
Okay.
So it's a proprietary manufacturing. If you don't think ZMA has been tested, it's been tested thousands of times. Okay.
I just want you to clarify. Yeah, because somebody will listen to this think you selling keys. What I'm talking kilos of dope.
No. It's zinc and magnesium and vitamin B6. You can buy 25 different brands on Google or Amazon. Okay. So it is what it is. It's perfectly legal. That's where I make all of my money. Okay. It would make no sense for me with all the scrutiny that I'm under, and people call me the face of all this stuff for decades, which is complete bullshit. There's been rampant use of performance-enhancing drugs at the elite level of sport for 5 decades. Okay, I didn't come along and start all this stuff. I came along and discovered what the culture was about and made a very serious mistake, which was to join that culture. And I paid a huge price, and so did my family. Okay. And all the athletes associated with me. So I'm not going to go down that road again. Trust me.
Let me read some of the questions right here before I let you go, Vic. Right here, this guy. Shout out to OJ22 for dropping that half a hundo on your boy. He say shout out to Victor Conte for calling in 100. He say crazy how you never know who's listening. Great show as always, Coach. Yeah, I appreciate you, fam. Shout out to Kefren. I read that one already. Oh, now this is a good question. This brother here said that he said is marijuana on the list, and if so, why?
Okay, marijuana is not on the VADA list, and it has never been on the VADA list. And when the girl, Shakur Richardson, the 100-meter female that tested positive before the 20 Olympics, I wrote a big feature article about this for a website saying it makes no sense. It should be classified like beer and wine.
Yeah. If
you show up and you're out of your mind from smoking a big doobie, then maybe you shouldn't be boxing. But it certainly should not be at any time. And here's what's crazy is the WADA code used to have a certain threshold, whatever it was, like 15 micrograms, or I forget the measurement unit. Then what they did is they raised it to a 10-fold higher, what we call the threshold. Mm-hmm. So unless you're smoking it right before you step in the ring, you're probably not going to test positive for it. So now even the Nevada Commission has dropped it. They no longer test for it. The UFC no longer tests for it. VADA has never tested for it. So marijuana should have never, ever been classified as a prohibited substance, in my opinion.
It's amazing you said that because I was at a Pro Box event last night. Roy Jones was there, Bomac, Coach Red, but Calvin Davis was fighting, and Keyshawn Davis was there as well. So I know he got suspended for they found marijuana in his system in the state of Texas, and they suspended him and reverse his victory that he had over the guy. That's why that's
the problem with boxing. What you just said is the rules are not. They call it harmonization at the Olympic level. That means everybody's on the same page. Here you have different rules in Texas compared to California, compared to Nevada, compared to New York. It's so you better be careful depending upon where you're fighting to take a look, because marijuana may still be on some of these prohibited substances lists of some state commissions.
Okay. Shout out to $1 Trillion Dreams. He said, why does it cost so much for fighters to be tested? And what sets SNAC products apart from their competitors? I think he answered that earlier.
Well, I explained the SNAC stuff earlier because we have individualized formulas. We're not the copycat Me Too like everybody else with the same, ingredients in their pre-formula. They all even call it the same name, pre. But what was the other part of the question?
The other part of the question was why does it cost so much to be tested?
Oh, because the majority of the expense comes from they have 2 doping control officers that have to fly wherever the fighter is, and then they have to rent a car, and they have to get a hotel, and they have to go and find the fighter, and however that long that takes. If they're not there based on what the hour window that they give them on the whereabouts form, so they have to collect that sample. Then they come back, and like I said before, all prohibited substances, everything on the prohibited list is tested for. Now, you have the more what we'll call expensive tests, and those are the like EPO is expensive, growth hormone is expensive. What they call IRMS, also nicknamed CIR or carbon isotope ratio testing, that's for synthetic testosterone. Really, really important. VADA tests every single urine sample they do for synthetic testosterone. Other commissions, the WADA code does not. They use the TE ratio, which is easy to circumvent that. And if they get a positive, then they do the IRMS test as a confirmatory test. So they might follow up. So VADA testing is the most stringent. If you want to plug all the holes, or as many as you possibly can, for that period of time that the testing is conducted, then it costs about each time, and I stated this earlier, this is an about number based because airfare, hotel, cost, those expenses vary, but it's about $2,500 for them to show up and collect a sample on a Devin Haney or a Terence Crawford. And on average, it may be less. It may be less depending upon, but usually the most stringent, let's put it that way, the Caleb Plant and Canelo or a Spence and a Crawford, they're tested about, on average, and understand this could be 2 times in 1 week and not for 2 weeks, but the average is somewhere in the 10 to 11 day time frame.
All right, I have 3 more questions. Shout out to New Country. He said, question for Victor Conte. What's your take on Alicia Baumgardner's fiasco?
I don't like the way it's being handled. Similar to the Conor Ben, I've criticized Conor Ben, I've criticized Alicia. If you've got science, whatever that may be, bring it out and let's look at it. Let people, that they call it peer-reviewed science. That means the opposite of pseudoscience or fake science. So what they've done, both Conor and Alicia have come out and said, we have science that absolutely, positively proves that we're innocent, but we're not going to show it to anybody. And we can't show it to anybody because our lawyers are telling us not to. I call bullshit, okay? Complete bullshit. If you've got something that can truly clear your name, show the world. Show it to the top scientists that can evaluate this, that know what they're talking about, not somebody that you paid that has an agenda to help you get out of a case or not. Now, here's what I want to explain. And the first case was back in 1999 with 2 Italian runners. It's called a ruling of no fault or negligence. You can get a no fault or negligence ruling in many ways. And how you do that is you come and you tell them, here, I know where I got it. Here's where it is. Now, in the case of these runners, that when they first established it, they said, we're taking an iron supplement. We believe it's contaminated. They tested it. It was contaminated. They went out and bought 6 different bottles from different places. They all of a sudden, they discovered 57% of those capsules in that bottle would cause a positive test. Boom. The no fault or negligence ruling was established. They were exonerated. Now, there's another case. There was a female boxer, Virginia Futch, or however you pronounce her name, from Texas. And she had sex with her boyfriend, and her boyfriend was using stuff. And he came and testified, or whether he had a prescription or whatever, and it was transferred through having sex, where she got a no fault or negligence ruling. She was exonerated. So if you know where you got it, remember all the eggs? Oh, it must have come from eggs. That's complete BS. Even they know that's BS. Okay, I'm the one that originally posted online and told people about this little pilot study that they did, showing that if you have them take this clomiphene, the chickens, that it would get into the eggs and it would get into the meat, and it was actually, at a concentration that could cause a positive test, much like clenbuterol in the Canelo case in beef. However, it's banned. The use of that is banned in the country of the UK. So if you know that that's where it came from, well, you probably know what brand of eggs you bought and where you bought them. You go and you get that same brand and you take it and you have it tested. Well, as far as I know, they didn't do that. They didn't follow up. You present what they call exceptional circumstances evidence, something that's supportive, that helps your case, that indicates that it's more likely than not that you had no intent to cheat. But instead, they're hiding. Why are they hiding this evidence that they have? To me, it lacks credibility. And I don't know, because it will be, in the case of Alicia, it will obviously be the Michigan Commission, who I don't even know if their doors are open at this point. I read there's all kinds of issues and problems of lack of funding and no money, and they're who knows whether they're even capable of giving a good decision or not. I don't know that, but there is reason to believe that there's some issue there. Why is it dragging on for 4 months? That's my question. It was announced on August 15th. Here we are 4 months later, and we have no information. Why?
Yeah, that's a long time.
So I don't like it. I think that there needs to be transparency. Whatever information you have, you need to give it to the boxing world. Because you see what happens on the internet these days and social media is there's so much fake news, and people come out and they say repeatedly absolute proof that I didn't use drugs. Now, that is BS in my opinion. Okay, if you've got it, show it. If you can dance, get up and dance and show me. Show me the money.
Council Full G dropping a half a dub. He say different state commissions allow different ratio between testosterone and EPI testosterone. Do Nevada
Not true. That used to be the case. No, way back in the day with Floyd Mayweather, when at that point, during that, and this is around 2012, is when the rule changed, and then they adopted it. It was based on WADA and the Olympic movement, and they used an NCAA, and they used to use 6-1, and then everybody moved to 4-1. Okay, so it's been 4-1 as far as I know worldwide since 2012.
Okay, it's 4-1 now instead of 6-1. Okay, I got you.
Yes.
Have one more question for you, Vic. Right here, shout out to the Martin. He said Mayweather was found to have used a banned IV for the Pacquiao fight. Why would someone with knowledge of Nevada testing still use an IV?
Well, I don't know that. Everything that I heard about that case that they showed up to collect a sample, and whether that was the state of Nevada or whether that was the USADA people, I don't know. But I apparently later, whether something was backdated or they had a prescription or how they got around that, I don't know. But that rule has also changed. It used to be that you could have up to a certain amount. I think it was like 100 cc, before this time. But now I think it's like 50 cc within an 8-hour period. Okay. So a bag of IV, a single bag, has 250 cc. So IV now, before a fight, is illegal. Okay. But how are they going to know that? Can they detect that in a urine or blood sample? No, they can't. So they would have to get some information. They would have to show up. They would have to see you doing it, which is my understanding in the Mayweather case. But that to me was suspicious.
Vic, thank you so much. I had you answered pretty much all of my questions. Is there anything that you would like to say, sir, to all of the listeners or whoever may be interested in knowing more information about yourself and what do you do? Is there anything that you would like to say, any parting words before you go?
Well, there's educational information on the SNAC website, snac.com. All these allegations about, people wearing these shirts and hats and stuff, and that automatically means that they're doing undetectable steroids. I want to address that, okay? There are no longer any undetectable anabolic steroids. They don't exist, okay? And I'm going to explain to you why. Balco changed the rule. And before Balco, the way this worked was they had the testing for anabolic steroids, and there was two criteria. The one is all anabolic steroids are similar in structure to testosterone, and there had to be scientific proof that it promoted muscle growth or protein synthesis. They dropped these second prongs, so there doesn't have to be any science at all. And the only way, all it has to be is similar in structure to testosterone, and all anabolic steroids are. So you have what they call a mass spectrogram fragmentation pattern, and you have peaks. And if those peaks on that substance they're analyzing, even if they don't know the name, are similar or in the same area as testosterone without even a name, like THG or the clear that I was doing, damn, it's a positive test. So there has never been, since Balco 20 years ago, any undetectable steroids at all, because all undetectable steroids are similar in structure to testosterone, and they can bust you in a heartbeat even if they don't know the name of it. So all this nonsense about undetectable steroids, when's the next undetectable steroid going to come? They're not going to come because Balco changed the law and changed the rule. And I just explained to you why.
Okay. Listen, Mr. Conte, thank you so much for taking the time out. I think you've been very, very thorough in a lot of the things. I think that, we learned a lot, even myself. We learned a lot. I will be pretty much cutting up this interview and putting it out. I will let you know when I do that. That's just so for people who may not have want to listen to the entirety. I'll put it out in bits and pieces, like maybe 30 minutes at a time, because it was a long interview, so they can digest the information. But I really do.
Coach,
go ahead.
I want to thank you for the opportunity, and you've done a great job with these questions, and you opened it up to the people that had questions. So I want to thank you as well.
Yes, sir. I really appreciate you. Shout out to Victor Conte. Thank you so much, sir, for taking the time out to come on the show. I really appreciate you. Let's give him a round of applause. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Coach.
You're welcome. All right, guys, that was Victor Conte, Mr. Victor Conte, who was on the show. I didn't know he was going to come on the show, guys. I promise you, I did not know. I was just saying, hey, man, we got to get Victor Conte on, you know, and literally just speaking out loud. I was thinking maybe I can reach out to him on Twitter later on down the line or whatever, and bam, lo and behold.
Man, I'm out of here, bro. Let's go.